Our chronological Bible reading for October 23rd is John chapters 7 and 8. Verse 14 says, "When it was the middle of the festival, Jesus went into the temple and began teaching. The people were amazed because he had such wisdom and understanding, but they knew that he hadn't been to any of their schools." There is an authority that comes from spending time with God and knowing God and being able to speak on his behalf that far surpasses any authority that comes from having studied at a human institution. The call for all of us should not be to go to a Bible school unless that is specifically what God is calling us to do. The task for each of us is to spend so much time personally fellowshipping with God and studying his word that we're able to speak it with authority, that when we speak, people listen because they recognize that it didn't come from men, it came from God. Jesus pointed this out to them by saying, "My teaching didn't come from me. It didn't come from men. It came from the one who sent me. And if anyone wants to do his will, he will know whether my teaching is from God or from myself." The conversation goes deeper. Jesus actually questions them as to why they are trying to kill him. And of course, they didn't know that he knew that they were trying to kill him. And so they did what liars do. They projected onto him what they themselves were guilty of and said, "You have a demon." Jesus said, "I performed one work and you are all amazed. This is why Moses gave you circumcision." And he's making 2 points, the first of which is you have to cut away the flesh, which is what circumcision represents, in order to see the truth. You have to be willing to put off the flesh man and try to see with spiritual eyes. You have to be willing to humble yourself and ask God to give you the understanding, because without that humility before God, you have no hope of ever getting to God. Jesus was also making the point that because a baby boy is always circumcised on the 8th day according to the law, and that could even fall on the Sabbath, clearly they must have some misunderstanding about what it means to keep the Sabbath. He commands them in verse 24 to stop judging according to outward appearances, rather make a righteous judgment. This exchange caused a lot of people to question whether Jesus was the Messiah. Jesus was continuing to be somewhat mysterious about who he was. He was giving them clues, but he wasn't really spelling it out for them in detail. On the last and most important day of the feast, Jesus stood up and cried out, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink." He was talking about the Spirit, and it's fulfilled in those who believe in him and keep on believing. In chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus says, "I am the light of the world. Anyone who follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." The Pharisees argue, "You're testifying about yourself. That's not valid." Jesus begins making a distinction between himself and them. He says, "I know where I came from. I know where I'm going, but you don't know where you came from." Then he said, "If you knew me, you would know my Father," because to know Jesus is to know the Father. In verse 21, he says, "If you abide in my word, if you continue in my word, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." A lot of people want to be set free by the truth, but they don't want to be Jesus' disciples. You have to understand that he is the truth. He is the express embodiment of what is true. So if you know him, you will be set free. If you're in bondage in some area of your life, it's because you don't know him experientially in that area. The pursuit of the Christian life is to become fully free, and we do that by bringing Jesus into every aspect of our life. Some people don't want to do that, though, because they're proud. They think they already have the truth, and they're unwilling to admit that they're wrong. Therefore, they can't come to a knowledge of the truth because they've been blinded by their own pride that has given the enemy a foothold over them. It's so extreme in this instance that Jesus actually calls these men children of Satan. In verse 42, Jesus said, "If God were your father, you would love me because I came from him and now I'm here." The fact that they did not love Jesus shows that they weren't from God and that God was not their father. He said they were like their father, the devil, who was a murderer from the beginning. A lot of people teach that Satan was a beautiful angel in heaven and he revolted against God and he was cast out. But Jesus here says Satan was a murderer from the beginning. That seems to indicate he was created that way. And these men were just like him. They were only interested in furthering their own agenda. They weren't interested at all in what was true. Just like their father, these people would look for something that was true and then misapply it. They would take it out of context. Their followers today do the same thing. They'll scour every word of God and every word of someone they disagree with to try to find one thing that they can misquote, twist, take out of context, and use to try to prove their point. Jesus is calling them out on that, and they just can't see it. They don't recognize his authority because they're blinded by their own hatred and arrogance. Eventually, they claim Abraham as their father, and Jesus says to them, before Abraham was, I am. And of course, this is a reference to the divine name, the tetragrammation, the great name of God that he gave to Moses at that scene when he appeared out of the burning bush. The great religions today, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, all trace their roots back to Abraham, but Jesus says, before Abraham was, I already am. He's greater than the greatest prophet. He's greater than the father of all the people who believe in the one true God. As a matter of fact, he's their creator, and he will receive all the glory. And one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that he is Lord, that he's the Lord of lords, he's the King of kings. And he's offering to us the ability to enter in with him and reign alongside of him to receive his inheritance. The inheritance is available for all those who will enter in by faith, and may God bless you. May you have the faith to fully enter in. May he reveal himself to you as you seek him with all of your heart. And I'd love to hear any revelation you get. Whatever God is teaching you, won't you join our Estero Ecclesia community? The link is in the description box below, and share with us what God is showing you. Because the true biblical model of this faith movement Jesus began is that we would teach one another, that we would encourage one another, and that together, as Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 14:26, when we come together, everyone would bring a word, a hymn, a psalm, a tongue, an interpretation of a tongue, because Christianity was never meant to be a one-man show. Thanks for being here. We'll see you tomorrow.